Hello and welcome to the Family Brand Podcast. My name is Chris. I'm a husband, a father, and an entrepreneur.
My name's Melissa, and I am a wife, mother, former nurse turned real estate investor.
And we believe the greatest gift you can give your child is a last name that stands for something.
Your last name is your family's brand.
If you are a parent who wants to raise your child to know who they are, love who they are, and believe in who they are, this show is for you.
We promise to bring you real and authentic conversations with parents and experts who are committed to making their family their life's most important work.
This show will help you take a stand for your family and to raise your children by design, not default.
This week, I have an amazing and lovely guest, Elizabeth. Welcome to the Family Brand Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm so pumped to chat with you.
Yes, thank you. And as I went to introduce you right now, I was like, I was going to ask you, how do I pronounce your last name properly?
Hartke, like a heart and a key.
Key. Okay, awesome. Elizabeth and I got connected several months ago through a mutual friend, Allie Caffrey. So thank you, Allie, for that connection. I know Allie listens to the Family Brand Podcast, and it's been so fun getting to know Liz and her company. She has this an amazing company called Luminary Leadership, which I was able to take one of her courses earlier this year, and it helped me so much. And I just wanted to have Liz on the podcast to talk more about her family, her life experiences. I think she has a lot that families listening, parents listening can learn from Liz. So thanks for joining me today again.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat because I know you and I are very much on the same wavelength with a lot of things, and it's nice to know you're not alone when you're just in the crazy of life, the good, the bad, the ugly. And it just feels good to talk to other people who are navigating it too.
Totally. Will you tell us a little bit about you and your family? And you're in some transitions right now. Maybe you could touch on that too.
Yeah, it's a circus over here. We are currently gearing up to move cross country. So we are about a week and a half out from having to pack our trucks and drive cross country. But I run the Luminary Leadership Company. I founded it a little over 12 years ago. So I've been doing what I do for just about a dozen years plus. And primarily what I do is I work with entrepreneurs, small business owners, and I help them to tap into their potential and possibility within their businesses and using their businesses as a vehicle to live out their God-led calling. Like for years, I was more so on the marketing side of things and really supporting these business owners to scale because it was like everybody wants to scale. I grew up just immersed in entrepreneurship. Both my parents run their own businesses. My mom still to this day. My grandfather ran his own business until he no longer could. My aunts and uncles. So that was very normal for me. But what I noticed amidst all of them, despite how incredibly good they were at their craft, how loving they were with how they led and cared for their people, both clients and team, and how ethical they were in their business, they were all just capped by their own time. So they had flexibility, which was awesome. It meant my mom was like at every ball game and cooking dinner and there in the morning and bringing snacks into our classrooms and all those things. But she'd pay for it later because she only had that flexibility. She didn't have true freedom. She had to be working and logging those hours in order to bring in the revenue we needed to keep the business open and to feed our family. So I was really passionate about that for many years of like, man, I want to help these entrepreneurs, these small business owners scale so that they have freedom, not just flexibility. But then in the first probably 5 years of doing that, I started to see the trends that every single one across the board, every single business owner was capped by themselves. Like at some point, their limitation was no longer the strategies they were employing, but no longer their level of marketing or how good their team was. It was them. So that's where my passion for leadership really sparked. And I've done this work with thousands of entrepreneurs now, from people, in the I'll say earlier stages of business all the way up to, we advise for John Maxwell and everybody in between. And I'm just super passionate, mostly because I know behind every ambitious entrepreneur is a family that deserves more of them. And I want to make sure that we're really leaning into what we're here to do in our limited time here on earth. And that to me is going to be the best ripple effect that we can create for our families. So that's where my heart lies. And that's why I love working with people like you.
Thank you. And was it like a distinct moment that you remember where it's like I want to make a shift in how I'm doing this? Or not necessarily?
Yeah, it was, things are often born out of like inspiration or desperation, right?
Mm.
For me, it's been both throughout the years. And I had this one moment, it was in 2015. We were having our most successful year yet. We had just broken into our first $1 million in profit. I was starting to be recognized for the work that I was doing and getting featured in different publications and Forbes and whatever. And it was also the year we had our first baby. We have 4 little kids. I am a mom of 4 and we homeschool. And as you know, you're just like spinning all the plates. But that was when we had our first baby, our son. And I remember getting I received an award that year. And I remember taking the stage at this event to receive that award and like being on stage and thinking like, this doesn't feel like success to me. I was spread so thin. I was so overwhelmed. I had set all these financial goals and I'd hit them and I couldn't have cared less. There was zero satisfaction in it for me. Everything felt so like manufactured and I was just fighting for everything. And I went to this event out of desperation that was all about, like, it was a room full of people like me, like totally maxed out. We were like, we know we want to grow, but we don't have anything more to give. And one of the presenters took the stage, who ended up becoming a mentor of mine. And he asked 2 questions. He said, what do you want more than anything? And I could rattle off the answer so easily. I'm like, I want to be a present mother. I want to have freedom. I want to provide for my family. I want to have more peace in my days. I want to be there to take care of other family members. Like I had all the things I wanted. I want to be a leading author and speaker and like all this, whatever. And then the second follow-up question was like, okay, if I were to open your calendar, would I see the evidence that that is true? And I knew immediately, like that was my gut check of like, nope, it's not true. And then I had this kind of humbling moment of like, oh my gosh, I'm leading my clients off the same cliff that I'm like falling off of right now. Because I was doing everything I could to help them scale. And they were scaling and they were miserable too. Like I was seeing, in the industry of entrepreneurship, it's such a blessing for families because I believe, and I know this like rubs some people the wrong way if they work in different industries or they work in, they're a nurse or they're a teacher or they, work in a 9 to 5, but I stand by it. I believe that entrepreneurship is the most incredible vehicle for families to be united and to create legacy. However, at the same time, so it's on that side of the spectrum, but on the other side of the spectrum, it can also be one of the most detrimental things to family. And I've seen it. Divorces, I've seen kids, just completely steamrolled by their parent who is either driven by ambition or out of necessity to pay the bills to keep the doors open. So how do we tip the scales for these family-oriented entrepreneurs to ensure that their family is first and that this is creating a positive legacy in their homes, not just, bank account and the clients they're serving? So that was kind of my catalyst where it was like, obviously everything didn't change overnight, but it shook me up. I was like, man, I feel like I'm doing like a moral disservice to the people I'm serving by just trying to help them get the next best strategy to make the next buck. Like I have to secure these people on a foundation of leadership. Otherwise, they're going to just tip right over the edge like I was.
That's an incredible story that you had that moment where you maybe were kind of awakened, but that you were able to pivot too for for the people that you were leading and help them down that same similar path. I know oftentimes I hear people say, when you're in that busy phase of building the business and it's like maybe you're not as present as you want to be, or I think sometimes when you're starting out, you have a picture of what it looks like, but then you get in the middle of it and it's like it's way more involved and you're way more busy and it requires way more of you than you maybe thought it did. And I've heard some people say, but I'm doing this for my family. Like I'm making this money or I'm hustling, whatever, it's for my family. What would you say to that?
I would say, my uncle once said this to me. I was having a conversation with him. And I was talking about my intentions, right? I'm like, yeah, but like, my intentions are good. And, like just feeling like I was leaning so heavily on what I was intending to happen. He's like, Liz, there's a difference between intention and impact. The intention is like what's on your heart. And that's good. That's pure, right? Like you intend to be that present parent and you're doing this for your family. But if how you're doing it creates an impact that is negative or that isn't like the intention doesn't translate, right? Like to you, you're doing it for your family. To your kids, mom and dad are never there or whatever. Or like the business comes before me or they're on their phone more than they're sitting and reading a book with me. Like that's the impact, and ultimately the impact matters. Now, I believe in intention. I think we have to be super intentional about how we do things and whatever. But we also have to make sure that that intention translates in the actual reverberation and impact that it's going to make. So I would say to those people who I've been in those shoes where I've said, oh, I'm this is my why, or I'm doing this for my family. Well, if it comes at the expense of your family in the current moment, you have to do it differently. And that's the coolest part about entrepreneurship today, is that we get to reimagine, like we literally get to reinvent the wheel however we want. There is never an excuse any longer where it's like, oh, this is just the industry. Like I've worked with photographers, real estate agents, people in education. I've worked with lawyers and doctors, like very traditional, this is the industry people. And we've completely broken the mold on how they do what they do so that the impact that they make in their home is connected to the intention they had in the first place. So I would just say, like, sorry, your excuses are not valid any longer because there are too many opportunities to change the vehicle, to reform the model so that it does have a positive impact. And I think the way that we do that is that we know with great clarity what our true north is. Like, what are we here to do? Why are we here to do it? And then we build the business up to honor that. We don't build the business and then like hope it magically honors our values. It's just not going to work that way.
All that distinction that you made about intention versus impact, I think that is a really beautiful way of looking at the present day. And yes, I might have good intentions, the best of intentions, but what is the actual impact of the decisions that I'm actually making today? You, this is a topic that I want to explore a little bit more on the Family Round podcast, is this just highlighting mothers who are doing motherhood like beautifully and intentionally and well, and who also have other things on their heart like that they want to pursue. I think sometimes, at least for me, it's felt like an or. It's like I'm going to be doing one or the other. I would love to hear from you, like what that journey has looked like for you, and how do you find that? Maybe it's not a balance, but how do you navigate just the balance of that?
Yeah. This has been something I've just been actively learning as our family grows, as our business grows, as the demands of both grow, right? Like we decided years ago that we were going to homeschool, which was totally not on our radar. And so that's an added dynamic. Like we're not a family that our kids are ever out of the house from 8 a.m. till 3 p.m, where we can be like, okay, that's our hard work time. Like, and I think the first thing for me was shifting my expectations. I'm like, I used to think business looked this way, right? Like family looked this way. And I think I had to just totally throw away the rule book on how it was supposed to look. It's almost like, who told you it was supposed to look good and like not be messy and be easy? Like, who lied to you and told you those things? Because it's not true. Like if people, we bring clients into our home all the time. It's a big part of our business where we want to break bread with people. Like we believe that business is the vehicle, family is the vehicle, faith is the vehicle, and all of those things can be intertwined. And we want to talk about it around our dining room table. So we regularly bring clients out here to the farm, helping them in business, but also having real conversations, because what you're talking about right now is a very real struggle for a lot of entrepreneurial parents. And we want to make sure that we're just kind of clearing the deck when people feel that pressure and they're like, I don't know how to balance it all. It's like, who said you were supposed to balance it? Like, who said this was supposed to be clean and just this beautiful path ahead of you? And I think when I shifted my expectation of like, man, this is going to take grit. This is going to be 1,000 times harder than if I chose to just focus on my business or just focus on my kids. But to me, hard is the path to fruitfulness, right? Like that challenge. I have we call it the visionary matrix at Luminary Leadership, and it's 4 quadrants. And the world tells us that we should seek easy. Like, what is the low-hanging fruit? We do this all the time in business, right? Where we're like, okay, based on our resources today, what would be the easy thing that we could create or sell or do that would get us a quick win? We also do it with our kids. We're like, what would get them to stop tantruming right now? Like, give them an iPad, right? Like, that's so much easier. But oftentimes the easy things that we choose are really heavy. Like, they weigh on us. They create a negative impact down the line. We're not thinking ahead. So yes, you could, in business, go for the low-hanging fruit, but you're never going to reach the long-term vision because the long-term vision requires you to expand outside of what's easy. Yes, you could stick the iPad in front of your kid, but then you're going to be dealing with the tantrums and just the device addiction and all the things that comes with that. So there's a heaviness to easy. So to us, that quadrant, there's a quadrant in the upper right that the formula is actually hard. So it's challenging, but light, meaning you know that when you land in that zone, in that quadrant, that the choices you're making are going to be really freaking challenging and really, really hard. And the average person is not going to choose them because of that. But when you sit with them and you think about them and you pray on them, you're like, there's a lightness in my soul on that, right? Like, I know God's calling me to this in this season. I am gearing up for battle. Like, let's armor up, let's go. So to me, it's just like more of a rally cry to those parents you're talking about, to those mothers, of like, stop expecting it to be something that it will never be. Glory is never on the other side of something simple and easy and beautiful and curated. Like, block all the friggin' accounts on Instagram that have deceived you and gear up for battle. Like, you are choosing to lean into the calling of whatever has been placed on your heart business-wise, right? And the even more important calling of raising these leaders, raising resilient children. Now, my opinion, and this is very much caught, not taught. This is how I was raised. And I know a lot of people disagree with me. We live in such a like self-care, you first, put the mask on before the kids kind of thing. I don't subscribe to that. Your kids should come before your business. Your kids should come before you. And your kids should be greatly considered when you're setting goals, casting a vision, pursuing whatever else outside of raising children is on your heart, because that is number one outside of marriage and faith. Like, your children, that is such a sacred yes that you've said to God gifting you these children that you are going to shepherd. Like, you want to talk about legacy? It's right there in those kids. It's the most important thing you'll ever do. Now, I am a strong believer that you can absolutely, it can be both and. We run a multi-million-dollar business. I am the primary, person running it. My husband's actually more so on the kids these days. We kind of shift and pivot depending on the seasons, whatever we're working on. But he's more behind the scenes in the business. So when he needs to be, generating reports or running ads or any of the tech stuff, like, that's all him. But primarily, like, that's my time focus goes there. But we believe that it's entirely possible to build a business that honors that initial, far more important calling of raising children. So it is very much a both and. I absolutely believe in that. I don't know if I've ever felt in balance, but I have felt like I figured out how to integrate these two. And that's the word for us. It's like, how is there integration? And the key way that we do that is we set, and I'm sure you do a lot of this too, Melissa, is like, we really talk about like, what is our mission and calling as a family? Like, we're a team. Why did God put us together as a team? Like, each person on this team has a valuable role and we're called to something. So as a team, what are we called to? Like, well, we believe that the Hartke family is called to impact other families and help them become the people who they're called to be in their lives, like to be the leaders, unlocking that potential. Okay, cool. So we're going to make sure that our business is designed to be the vehicle to live out that family mission. So the two are integrated already just right from the get-go. It's not these two separate worlds. And then I also so wholeheartedly believe that business, when you run a business, because I personally experienced this growing up. I learned more sitting in my mom's office with her as she was working and dealing with a client, or working in my grandfather's law office, listening to how he interacted with people, or answering phones at my uncle's chiropractic practice, or going on rides with my dad when he was, ran a real estate appraisal business, like going to take pictures of homes. Like, I learned more in the school of entrepreneurship, of just being in their businesses, than I did in school. So I also think it's an incredible tool to teach our kids financial wisdom, how to have grit and work through hard times, how to put others first, how to have strong ethics and morals in the work that you do, how you impact others, communication, like learning new skills. Everything can be taught through the vehicle of entrepreneurship. So I'm also like, man, make your business a classroom as much as you can. Our kids are young, but they are already starting to understand why we do what we do, how they can be a part of it. They're already talking about like, oh, well, I notice you hire a photographer a couple times a year. Like, could I get a camera? I'm like, cool, you want to learn photography? Great. Like, I'd much rather hire you. You're 7, so we need to work on it a little bit. But like, yeah, let's do it. Or my son is super interested, and he's been learning coding and all these different things. He's like, I noticed Dad doing stuff on the computer with numbers. Like, do you think I could do that someday? I'm like, yeah, for sure. We can teach you that. So to me, it's like, man, that integration is not just how do we do it? It's like, what a gift we could be giving our kids in doing it. And yes, it's a freaking sacrifice. Set the expectation that it's going to be hard. It's going to be a sacrifice. I'm going to have a kid melting down at the same time that I need to do these 10 other things. And like, that's what I've signed up for. But the glory is on the other side of that. And it's not accessible through easy. So like, just throw that out the window.
Yeah, so much good stuff to take from that. Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts stirring that are related. It reminds me of like when my kids were younger, they always wanted to help like with dinner, and it was always like, this is going to make it so much harder. Like,
Yes.
just let me do it. Like, it would be just easier if you guys go and do your thing, whatever. But nevertheless, I persisted and like invited them in, to help with dinner or whatever. And now I have some really great sous chefs that like know how to like work their way around in a kitchen. And I mean, that's just like a small example, but it's just like a really tangible example of how I can see like that has played out that way. And then the other thing is this summer, we've been encouraging our kids, even our youngest is 7, to like put themselves out there this summer. Like, how are you going to make some money? Like, they have some goals, and some of them are financial, and some of them are things they want to do. Like, my daughter wants to go to a Benson Boone concert. She's 12, and I was like, yeah, like, let's earn the money for those tickets and stuff. And so she's been racking her brain about how to earn the money and add value to the world around her. And so many good lessons have come out of that. Like you're saying, it's not necessarily related to my business or Chris's business, but just those entrepreneurship principles of having to call people and having to like set prices and just talk to people as they've been setting up like a roadside stand, having to interact with people. I'm like, oh, there's so much good stuff coming out of that entrepreneurship journey for our family this summer.
Totally. It's more so about like, I've had a few people comment on things where they're like, oh, like you talk all about, letting your kids really lean into their gifts, but you're going to make them be an entrepreneur. And I was like, nope, never said that. Like, it's about fostering the entrepreneurial spirit, because that will serve them in any career path. If they want to be a stay-at-home parent, entrepreneurial spirit is going to help them have the resilience and the, heart to do such an incredibly hard job. If they want to be a teacher, they're going to have a mindset where it's like, think critically and all the different things you learn as an entrepreneur. I'm not at all saying they have to go this path. I hope they do, because I think they'll have more opportunity. But I have incredible people that work within our business, and they 100%. We don't hire someone if they don't have an entrepreneurial spirit. They might not be like an entrepreneur technically because they're not running their business. They're working within ours, but absolutely, I consider them entrepreneurs. So I see so much value. There are so many different paths, but you can just learn so much. It's about that spirit. It's about fostering that spirit.
I get asked this ever so often, and I'd love to ask you, how do you, as you're running a business with your partner, with your husband, how is that? And how, if people just always ask me like, or they comment, I could never do that. Like, how do you do that? Do you have what are your secrets or what are your rhythms to find success in running a business with your spouse?
Yeah, that's a great question. In the beginning, it was really hard. So my husband, he way back before kids, he was working full time at Liberty Mutual Global headquarters as an actuary. And actuaries are traditionally always one of the best paid, most secure, stable jobs, but nobody wants the job because you have to pass a series of the most challenging exams that exist in the professional world. And he did, and he's brilliant with numbers and all that stuff. But once the business really started to take off and we started having kids, he was like, I am missing moments for a paycheck now because we don't really need my income. Like, I'm not doing it. So he left and he started to come into the business more. And it was really hard because we are polar opposites, share the same values, which is critical. But in personality, we could not be more different. I am such a 30,000-foot view thinker. Put me in the clouds all day. I rally the troops around ideas. I come up with 8 million ideas a day. I don't care about the how. We'll figure it out. Let's jump off the cliff. We'll buy a pair of wings on the way down. That's me 100%. Michael is absolutely details. We are not taking a single step until we know the exact path that we're going to go down. Let's be super conservative in how we do things, meaning let's weigh every decision, pro-con list. And I'm like, throw caution to the wind. I have an inkling this is going to be great. So we were really opposites. And so we really clashed in the beginning. And one of the greatest gifts to our company was Katie is a member of our team. She came with a background in personality. She was hired by corporations to come in and use the DISC personality profile, which I had already taken. Michael had already taken it, but to teach these companies and these teams how to really gel and work and be like a powerhouse. So she came in and she had us all taking personality tests. I'm like, oh, it's always cool to know what your tendencies are or whatever. But then she taught us how to leverage our gifts as a team. And we went from butting heads on how to do things, and because I'd want to go fast, he'd want to go cautiously and slow. And she's like, no, you don't understand. This is a perfect match. And she helped us get into our sweet spots, leveraging our personality styles, and everything shifted after that, where we no longer, he was never put in positions where he had to be the creator of something new because that stressed him out. And I was never put in the detail positions because it's why would we do that? Because I hate it and it stresses me out when he's so gifted at it. So we really got in the right zone. So I would strongly recommend if anyone works with their spouse, just take a personality, a detailed personality profile, and then have someone that can decipher that for you and show you, yes, these are your strengths, stay in this role. These are your strengths, stay in this role. This is a major weakness. Stop trying to fix your weaknesses. Just stay away from that. Let them do this one. So that really, really helped us. I think too, just time, doing it wrong for a while helped us learn how we didn't want to do it. So Michael and I have a strong rule. People can take it or leave it. But we never put quit on the table. So in our marriage, we don't use the D word in our marriage. It's just not an option for us. We don't put quit on the table for business, right? It's always, man, I have no idea how we're going to do this, but we're going to find a way because we don't have that option available to us. And that has really helped us actually because you become a creative thinker. When so I'll give you the example. I've birthed in a hospital and I've birthed in a birth center. When I was in and I had natural labors and deliveries, so I didn't want any medication or anything. But when I got to that level 10, really level 1,000 pain, where I'm losing my marbles and I'm in the hospital, I'm like, I don't care if you hit me with a baseball bat. Give me whatever you have to take away my pain. And Michael's like, no, you said you wanted to do this naturally. And I'm ready to murder him because it was available to me, because that option was there. Now, when I was in the birth center, my labor was way worse. I had I had a 36-hour labor. It was really challenging. Never once did my mind go to what can I do to get out of this? Or what epidural can I get or whatever? because it was not on the table. So when you take those kind of like that way of thinking of like, well, if this gets really hard, we can just quit, whether it be in the marriage or in the business or whatever. When you take that off the table, your brain just starts finding routes, right? It's like, okay, like not an option. So how are we going to get there? And we've been through really tough times in the business. We've been through tough times in our marriage. But because there was no escape route or like backdoor exit, it was like, all right, like this might be ugly, this might be hard, but we're going to keep navigating it. So that mentality has really helped us and challenged us. And through those hard times, you build character, you build trust in each other, you build more connection, you see what you're made of as a couple. So I think, again, I would probably also throw the caveat on it of like, don't set the expectation that it's going to be like rosy all the time. You know, sometimes we disagree in business decisions, but because we know our sweet spots, we know who makes that decision when, based on like the thing that we're in. If it's a financial decision based on numbers, like Michael's going to make that decision because he's just way more gifted in that department. But if it's a creative decision, like he's out, I'm in. So we just kind of know whose gifts are where, and we honor that.
Yeah, that's cool that you've learned enough about each other and, you know, done the work to really figure out what are each of our zones of genius and like let's stay in them as much as possible. Chris and I have this joke because we are very different also, Chris and I sometimes it seems like our differences are like that they're just hard to navigate sometimes, and it's like we're not working well together and this is really hard. But I always remind him it's turned into a joke. I'm like, Chris, I know we're different, but we are better together. Like my strengths are different than yours and yours are different than mine, but together, like we are an incredible team. And sometimes we're like, don't even believe it ourselves. Like, no, we are not better together in this moment. But I maintain to this day, like, no, we are better together.
Yeah. Sometimes you just have to. I think one of the things that has really served me and made me almost a little bit crazy, like I think some of my friends from childhood think I'm nuts, is that I almost like intentionally seek out. I thrive in challenge. Like I am so bored when things are too easy for me. And what I don't mean is like I'm really good at resting. So I don't want to get it twisted. If my mind is like, this time is a lot, if I'm on vacation and my intention is to be totally present and not, I can totally clock out. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying I have to create chaos in order to be happy or whatever. What I'm saying is I know that I grow and I evolve and I'm like tapping into who I'm called to be when I'm in that gauntlet sometimes. So I've learned to see a lot of value in that. So when we step into those harder seasons, I don't shy away from it like I used to, like where I'm like, this doesn't feel good. So let's just drop it or let's not go there. I'm like, all right, let's get to the root of this. Let's figure this one out. Sometimes it is really challenging, but it has totally served us to kind of have that mentality. And Michael's very much the same way, where it's not about seeking confrontation, but in friction, there's traction, right? Like that's how we get momentum. So I think not being afraid of that, if you're both on that same wavelength of like, okay, we're going to do this together, that it can be really fruitful.
Yeah, I like that. Friction creates traction.
Yeah.
You have had the last 4 or 5 months, like a life-changing experience that happened to you and to your family. I would, before we go, I'm like, I really would love to have you just share with the audience, kind of just your story, really, the last few months, and once we get into that, just share like you've shared a little bit with me how that experience kind of shifted like a lot for you. Would you share your story the last few months?
Yeah. So back in November, we found out we were expecting our 5th baby. We're hopeful that our family just continues to expand. Like I said, thrive and challenge. The more the merrier. And everything was great. I had gone and we saw the baby a couple times, and I went in for a routine Doppler check just to hear the heartbeat at about 17 weeks. And they couldn't find baby's heartbeat. And it was such a absolute shock to us because everything was going well. Baby was measuring well. Like, it just was not something. And I have experienced a miscarriage early, years ago, but now, like, we were almost halfway through this thing and everything was looking good. So anyway, we were absolutely rocked by that. And over that next week, I was home just waiting for my body to go into labor. I was far enough along that I was going to need to deliver at the birth center in a hospital just to have that support. And I went into labor really quickly, like I couldn't get anywhere. It just happened. And I delivered our son at home, and I started immediately hemorrhaging. Like, I knew something was wrong right away. And then I started to lose consciousness. So all of this is kind of happening in a very short window of time. Thank God my best friend had been staying with us for a little while, unrelated to that. And so she was there this was happening in the morning, to just tap in with our kids because they were starting to get up. It was like 6:30 in the morning. They were wanting breakfast. And within 30 minutes, all this kind of chaos breaks loose. So Michael kind of scooped me up. We're on the phone with the midwife. She's like, get her to the hospital. She needs fluids. She'll probably be fine. Just get her there to get things checked out. So we're on our way to the hospital, and I'm like kind of going in and out. And when we get to the hospital, unfortunately, we had a doctor at the ER who is not well versed in a woman having a stillbirth, miscarriage, everything. And basically is schooling me, telling me, oh, no, this is totally normal. Like, you just delivered a baby. Of course you're bleeding. I'm like, nope, not normal. Having 4 kids.
Yeah.
I can't sit up without feeling like I'm going to pass out. And my blood pressure just kept dropping and dropping and dropping. So it's a Sunday at a little community hospital, which we were trying to avoid this place like the plague because we knew it was not going to be equipped. And to just kind of speed up the story through a series of twists and turns, we're calling in, like, I want an ultrasound, I want a hemoglobin test, I want to know, like, where I'm at level-wise. And they're running all these tests, and he says, oh, ultrasound is clear. There's no, like, remaining tissue or, like, the placenta's out. You're good to go. You know, this is normal blood loss, and discharges me. And the nurse comes in with my discharge papers, is like after 3 hours of sitting in the hospital, like actively hemorrhaging. And she looks at me, and I'm like, I'm gray because I've lost so much blood. And she looks at my blood pressure, which at that point had dropped down to 67/38. And she's like, I don't feel comfortable sending you home. So she's like, I'll be right back. So she thankfully had the courage to go above the doctor's orders and went and got OB from the other department. And she came in and she started an exam. And as soon as she started the exam, I immediately started like full on hemorrhaging, like gushing. Like, if you had a pitcher of water and knocked it over, I looked, and within seconds, every corner of the room was like filled with blood on the floor. So she jumps up, okay, get her into surgery immediately, but surgery's nowhere to be found, or surgical team's nowhere to be found because it's Sunday. So through that series, that there was about a 30-minute span after that where everybody's just frantic. Nurses trying to figure out what to do. They're pumping me with more fluid to try and offset the blood loss. I'm losing consciousness, so they tip the bed upside down so my head would be down and my feet would be up to try and like slow the bleeding and try and keep me conscious so I could tell them like how I was feeling, what was happening. And I'm saying to Michael, like, Michael, I'm going to die on this bed. Like, they need to do something now. So he goes to open the door to get the nurse and says, like, somebody get in here. And he hears the nurse on her, two-way phone with the team say, what do you mean they're 30 minutes out? She doesn't have 30 minutes. So that's when kind of everything went crazy. So we get the OB in the room, and I just look at her and I'm like, listen, am I going home to my kids? And she just looks at me, tears start pouring down her face, and she says, we're going to just do the very best we can. And then she told Michael and I to just take a minute because it might be our last moment together. So in those moments of complete panic, obviously the things that come into your mind are like, I'd never had an experience like that. And it's dawning on me like, oh, I'm not going to survive this experience. And I could tell by like how I was getting cold, I was starting to shake, I was in and out of consciousness. I was like nothing was right. So I'm talking to Michael and I'm telling him the things I want him to know. I'm like, I have no time to like think through this. And the the thoughts coming into my head were all my family. It was like, oh my gosh, I might not be, my kids are going to be raised up without a mother. Like, did I do enough to instill in them the values and the love and the things they need to carry them through a lifetime without a mom? Then I'm thinking about my husband, like, oh, all the things I would have done differently, all the stupid fights I would have never had, all the things I want to say, but like words aren't coming out of my mouth. So eventually they get me up to surgery. A lot of crazy miracles happened in that hospital, like true full-born miracles that make no sense. I ended up losing over 60% of my blood volume, which around 40% most people don't survive. I got a major blood transfusion. And in the surgery, they found that my placenta was still fully intact. So that doctor completely misread the ultrasound. And thankfully, they were able to stop the bleeding. And my poor husband was sitting, just waiting to be told that his wife didn't make it, because that's basically what they prepped him for. And when I came out of surgery and Michael was there waiting for me, and we spent a few days in the hospital, so we had time to just try and process what had just happened, including just like, oh my God, like I don't even want to, I want to just grieve my son. I don't want to think about like this trauma of what we just went through. And I remember saying to Michael in the hospital, I am never spending another moment doing anything that I'm not feeling called by God to do in my business again. Because so often we get so focused on the things that's like, what makes sense? What's this person doing? Like, how can I get better results here? How can we make more money? And we accidentally creep further and further away from those innate gifts that we've been blessed with, or that calling that's been placed on our heart, in order to keep the doors open, in order to like find the success that's necessary, let alone the success we kind of get hungry for. And that moment just shifted everything for me. And I got so clear on our vision as a family and what those gifts are that I'm called to just really lean into, and how I can use those gifts to completely change the lives of other people that I get the blessing and honor to do work with and do life with. And it's literally like, it sounds dramatic, but it's true. Ever since that moment, everything has changed. Like there has been so much focus and so much expansion in opportunities that I could have never even gotten my hands on had I not had the courage to just, it wasn't even courage. It was just like a no-brainer. I'm like, nope, never again. Like I cannot live with the thought getting to the end of my life and having wasted a second on of it on crap that didn't matter, or that wasn't made for me. And it also kind of wiped away so much of the minutia in our marriage too. You know, like you fight about stupid crap and then you experience something like that and you're like, really? Like we were arguing about who stacked the dishwasher? Like we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
And in that, it became really clear that we were not honoring a lot of the things that we really felt called to, because we were leaning into the someday mentality of like, oh, okay, let's just do this and then someday we'll do that. And one of those things was where we were living. So we bought our dream home here. I'm sitting down in our barn studio. I love this place. We're on an 11-acre farm in Wisconsin, literally views for miles, rolling green hills, like all the things that we wanted and pictured in a home were this place. And then we found it and it was so perfectly orchestrated. But I know with great certainty that I'm called to care for my parents as they age, and also to raise my children in the village that I was so blessed to be raised in. I'm from a really big Arabic Italian family where everybody still lives within miles of each other and everybody raises each other's kids, and nobody's like, there's no such thing as a nuclear family. Like it's a multi-generational family. It's everybody. So we put our house on the market and we're moving back out east, and we'll be right within that little radius. And it was one of the hardest decisions because we love this place, but it's a place, right? Like it doesn't hold anything that is of true value that when you look back on your life, you're like, oh, I stayed because I really liked this house. Like I liked the view. And what was cool was when we released control, both in the business where we like shut down certain programs we were running, in my schedule got totally wiped clean, which I've never done in the 12 years of business. In like how we were parenting the kids, like everything just kind of got wiped clean and we started over. And the abundance that's come from that, because we're so laser focused on what we know is for us, has been insane. Financially, like we sold our house for double what we bought it for 6 years ago. And I swear it's just all because we're just saying, okay, like, let's go. We have no idea how this is going to work, but it's going to happen. Let's just keep pursuing what's being put on our heart. So it was the hardest experience. But like I said, it was like so much good can come alongside suffering and sacrifice and pain. We learned so much. We became so much deeper connected as a family. We became more appreciative and grateful for what we do have. We became more clear on what's not for us and what is for us, and a little more courageous and probably a little more brazen in how we pursue those things. And it's been heartbreaking. Like there were so many heartbreaking things we had to face in that time. Like we had to bury our son. We had to have a funeral home come out. Like just so many things that you just never want to have on your list of things that you experience as a mother. And we got to have really good conversations with our kids, and they get to know they have a brother interceding for them in heaven. Like so many good things amidst the like indescribably challenging things that we faced. So blessings abound despite the struggle.
Thank you for sharing. I don't know because it's so fresh. Like it's all just happened. I don't know how you share that like so eloquently and so beautifully. Thank you for sharing. And it does, me listening to your story, it does, life is not like there is a finite like time to it. And I think too, like I operate like eventually someday so often in my life.
Yeah, we all do. Mm-hmm. And it's not, the hard thing is the further I get from it, the more I have to work to maintain what I learned. Because it's really easy to just like fall back into old habits. In the beginning, it was like Michael and I were like lovebirds because we're like, never leave my side again. Like, I can't believe I almost lost you, all that. But like then life happens and it's chaotic. So you have to work to preserve that. You have to remember it and remember where it came from. And the same in the business. Like my calendar got totally cleared. Thank God my team is so incredible, where they just were able to jump in and keep things going. And we saw growth even during that time. But it's easy to accidentally start to put the old things that you're like, I'm never putting that crap on my calendar again, or I'm not going for the low-hanging fruit. I'm going for like what's really for me. And even if it's really hard or even it's, feels out of reach, it's easy to end up looking at your calendar again and being like, wait, I'm right back in the same routines I was. Like this isn't what I wanted. So you have to fight to preserve that. But the other thing I learned that really shook me up, a lot of people were super kindly and very sweet intentions were saying like, oh, like God's not done with you yet. You're still here. Or, wow, he must have really big plans for you. If you made it out the other side of that, things like that. And what I realized was like, man, I didn't have to have this near-death experience to realize that every day I wake up is another chance. Like, is God calling me into whatever is next for me? So, and then that was kind of the moment where I realized that for other people too, of like, you don't have to walk you don't have to walk some dramatic path to realize like, God's got big plans for you too. You're still here. You woke up this morning. What are you going to do with it? Because you never know when that will be your last morning. So it's been a blessing. I didn't want to share in the beginning. The first month I was very inward. I was like in a cave. And then all of a sudden I just felt this nudge, like it's time to like put this in front of other people and serve others too. So it's gotten easier and easier to talk about it. Feels more purposeful.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for being willing to share your
Yeah.
story. How can people, how can people find you, and what type of, I'm sure everyone listening realizes like, wow, Liz is incredible. I want to work with her and Luminary Leadership Co. Like, what type of clients are you looking for, and how can people connect with you?
Yeah, so we work with we work directly with established entrepreneurs, so people who already have a business that they're seeking to grow, but also are very committed to their own growth in that process. And for them, we have our primary way is through our incubator program, which is our mastermind. It's very selective and it is invite only, but people can apply, and then we choose from those applicants. So that's at luminaryleadershipco.com /incubator. So if someone is established and really looking to blow the top off things, like we take people from busy entrepreneur into visionary CEO, getting them into their sweet spot, and that really unlocks that exponential growth potential while giving them more freedom. It's kind of the path to more is actually one of less. Like we strip away and we help them get really focused. Without having to have a near-death experience. Like you can do it without that. And then we also have intensives where we serve people of all different kinds of business owners. And to learn more about that in a free way where we can really, really serve you well and teach you how to leverage your calendar to be more spacious so that you can have that freedom and focus in on the things that are going to yield the most fruit while also giving you the most time back and space to be with your family, is through our workshop that we do that is called How to Create a Spacious, Profitable Visionary CEO Schedule so that you can unlock that next big leap for you without burning out. So that is at luminaryleadershipco.com /CEO. And they can just register and snag their seat for that workshop. It's a free workshop and we love doing that. And then you'll get more information on intensives and other ways we can work together. And you can always just DM me podcast and I'll shoot you our Luminary Leadership podcast too, just on Instagram, and I'll be over there as well.
Awesome. And we'll put all that in the show notes so people can easily find you. Do you have, we've talked about so much today. Do you have any last thoughts for anyone listening?
I know that there is a weight that can come with pursuing the callings on your heart of both business and family, or even just family. Like that's a tall order because the stakes are high. And I would just urge people who are tiptoeing or playing small because of fear or doubt that they're capable of doing what they're called to do, to really, whatever it is for them, lean into their faith or lean into whatever level of belief they need to know that if they're being called to something, it is there for a reason, and that they will never regret pursuing it. And oftentimes I think we learn so much in that pursuit. It's not even about the end game. It's about the courage to try. It's about putting your toes on the edge of the cliff and just going, and knowing that the road will kind of be built under your feet as you have the willingness to walk. Like it's not going to show up ahead of time. And that if it was something we were called into, like that, the path will be created and it will be a beautiful one, even with the many twists and turns. But it's a worthy calling. And I just love the work that you're doing, Melissa, because the family means so much to me. Like it's the root of all good. And the family is so under attack in our culture today that we need more people that are brave enough, like you, to make that a mission to preserve families and to cultivate strong families for the sake of future generations. And I'm all for it. I'm team Melissa and family brand all day.
Thank you. I love everything that you've shared today. And I think sometimes, just to echo what you just said, is that, at least for me, it's felt like, well, when I'm ready, I will XYZ, or once I, do a little bit more, then I'll be ready. But it's like, you're right. It's taking that step and not being ready, but like having that faith and that courage to like do
It's
it
so
anyway.
true. What has served me so well is making the decisions and discerning and taking the leaps as the leader I'm being called to become, not the person with the resources I currently am today. And that's changed everything for me. Like, show up, be in the experiences, in the rooms, in the opportunities that you're not ready for, and you will bloom more quickly and into who you're called to be. So give yourself that opportunity to be in that challenge to grow.
Thank you, Liz. Please go connect with Liz.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the Family Brand Podcast. To say thank you, we have something really awesome we'd love to share with you.
You know, we often hear from families who will tell us that they just feel so overwhelmed because of the demands that are placed on them. They feel like they're constantly being pulled in so many different directions and spread thin, and they're spending time as a family, but they don't feel like it's quality time. They're not really connected, and they want to be more intentional. And we can certainly relate because we felt like that at one point in our family. And so we created a guide that allowed us to really be more confident around how we spend time as a family and what we say yes to and what we say no to. And it's just brought so much more peace into our home. It's made our lives so much more simple, and we want to share it with you. So if you go to familybrand.com/free, you can download the How to Take Back Your Family's Time guide, and I can promise you it'll give you more confidence and more peace in your life and in your family.
One last thing, we feel so inspired when we hear from families that we are making a difference for them. We would love it if you would leave us a 5-star rating and a review on the podcast so we can reach even more amazing families. We truly believe that the way we change the world is one family at a time.